What's up, everybody? The SEC regular season comes to an end. Texas versus Georgia to crown a champion. We'll give you our Week 14 winners and losers of the week.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along on today's show. We'll give you our winners and losers of SEC Week 14 as the regular season came to an end. Also, we've already got guys hitting the transfer portal. National Signing Day is this week, much more. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You could start this season with a big return at FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets. If you win your first $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com today to get started. All right, we got plenty to dive into, so let's jump into it as we start with our first winner of the weekend. And we got to start over in College Station as the Texas Longhorns defeat the Texas A&M Aggies 17-7, and a big reason why. The Texas running back Tre Wisner, an absolute workhorse in the Longhorns winning College Station. Their first game back in College Station in over a decade, and the Longhorn run game was absolutely dominant. Wisner, 33 carries, 186 rushing yards, a career high for him. Sark saying after the game, we controlled the game and quite frankly dominated the game. Running back was, of course, a spot of concern for the Longhorns when they lost C.J. Baxter before the season. Running back Jaden Blue has been okay, but has battled fumbles throughout this year. It's really been the sophomore Wisner who has emerged as their workhorse back as the season has gone along. 157 carries, over 800 rush yards, also over 200 receiving yards. He finished the regular season fourth in the SEC in total rush yards. And, man, this game was just a lot of fun. The anticipated rivalry, return of this rivalry, which dates back to the 1890s. And, look, A&M fans, they showed up and showed out. The stadium was rocking, but they just had not much to root for. And it looked like this thing was going to head to be a blowout when Texas jumped out to a 17-0 halftime lead, but some interesting turnovers in the second half, and A&M did everything they could. The defense did everything they could, but the offense just unable to do much of anything. But crowd size of 109,000. You had Matthew McConaughey, you had Johnny Manziel, Drew Brees was on hand. I even saw University Police had to ask a man riding a horse and another riding a longhorn with a dog on it to leave campus before the game. I also saw two men were arrested who were wearing reflective vests and hard hats entering the stadium with fake construction credentials. They were arrested for criminal trespass. Just look, it was a hot ticket. Going price we were saying was about $1,000 to get into the stadium all last week. And man, Texas responded. A shout out to that Texas defense. They held A&M to just 248 total yards of offense, forced 2 turnovers, held A&M on a huge goal line stop. And the Aggies were 0 for 3 on fourth downs. Texas, they move on to face Georgia in the SEC championship game this weekend. But kudos to Texas. They responded. A lot of griping about their schedule. Did they get an easy draw as far as SEC opponents go? Yes, but it's not their fault. Sark and team can only play who's in front of them, and they beat their competition, and they advance to the SEC title game. So congrats to the Longhorns. Year 1 in the SEC, and already going to play for an SEC championship. It's ironic because I had some people tell me, well, they didn't play for a ton of Big 12 titles in recent years, but nonetheless, cream of the crop. Sark is peaking at the right time. Had this been 3-4 years ago, maybe they wouldn't have been as lucky, but Texas, very good this year. They've recruited well. Quinn Ewers played well enough. The defense has been lights out, and they're going to go get a rematch with Georgia. We'll preview that game as we get into this week. All right, another winner of the weekend. How about over at South Carolina? LaNorris Sellers. He has become a monster for the Gamecocks. This week he threw for 164, but rushed for 166 on the ground with 2 rushing touchdowns as South Carolina won over Clemson on the road 17-14 with the win. Carolina has now won 6 in a row. They're one of the hottest teams in the country. Many think that loss to Alabama is what will ultimately keep them out from possibly being an at-large team in the college football playoff. But still, what a job by Shane Beamer in year 4, especially after taking a step back last year where they went 5-7 and missed a bowl game. Now Beamer has his best season yet at 9-3. Still a chance at a 10th win in a bowl game. And for Gamecock fans, it's hard not to get excited about the future when you consider that LaNorris Sellers just a redshirt freshman this year. Crazy to think what he can be by next season. And, he seemingly got better and better as the year went along. Imagine if they had more weapons around him at wide receiver. Great farewell likely for senior running back Rocket Sanders. He had 60 yards rushing, 48 yards receiving in this one. He's battled injuries throughout his career at Arkansas, battled injuries this year. I will see if he plays in the bowl game. I'd expect he probably would. But, been a great year for him, and what a great get it was through the portal to add Rocket. Really helped make this offense that much more dynamic with Sellers and his running ability. And a quick note, we're going to see Carolina in their bowl game, but they will open next season against Virginia Tech at Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. So a fun one to open up next season. Certainly want to mark that on your calendars. Another winner of the weekend, how about in Tuscaloosa? It was quarterback Jalen Milroe. It was not the prettiest of games. He did throw an interception, and he fumbled 3 times, losing 2 of those. But Jalen Milroe threw for 256 yards and rushed for 104 on the ground with 3 rushing touchdowns as Alabama beat Auburn in the Iron Bowl 28-14. Milroe delivering big enough plays to help the Tide remain undefeated at home. He had runs of 17, 17, and 19 yards. He converted 12 of 18 third down attempts, and he rebounded from that game at Oklahoma, where he was intercepted 3 times, rushed for only 7 yards. But he was very impressive against Auburn. And now the question is, if Alabama has a resume worthy enough for a playoff spot. Just my opinion, the losses to unranked Vandy and unranked Oklahoma at the time probably negate the quality win over Georgia. But the head-to-head win over South Carolina seems to be what everyone thinks will keep them ahead of the Gamecocks in terms of getting a large spot. It's funny. I mean, they were like 3 touchdown favorites over South Carolina, hung on to win by 2, but still like a win's a win, and it was at home. So, like that's the tiebreaker. I get it. Look, to me, the loss at Oklahoma is still just so fresh in our minds, and then watching them play sloppy against Auburn, I just, I ask Alabama fans, this is the team you want to go to the playoff? Like, you risk getting into a playoff and getting embarrassed, right? Like, play like that, a playoff game against a good opponent, it could get ugly. But I imagine you rather make the playoff than not. It's just frustrating for South Carolina fans because they know, if LaNorris Sellers doesn't leave that LSU game, they probably win that one. The Ole Miss game, look, they rushed back LaNorris Sellers and Rocket Sanders from injury, and they were both not 100%. They didn't play well, and they got their butts beat. And then, of course, the Alabama game, they had a couple chances there late, just let it slip away. But nonetheless, back to Alabama. Milroe's passing numbers, they did dip from last year. His passing touchdowns went from 23 to 15. Interceptions went up from 6 to 10 this year. But his rushing yards were up. Over 700 rushing yards and an eye-popping 20 rushing touchdowns this year. Really strong. And we'll see if he plays in the bowl game. Many expect he is going to go pro and head to the NFL draft. So if that's the case, Jalen Milroe, really good run at Alabama. Now, doesn't win a championship there. We'll see. They could get in the playoff this year. But really good run for them, considering he was, benched a couple weeks into last season. And had some nice wins in his run in Tuscaloosa. All right, another winner of the weekend. How about Carson Beck? You rewind back to Friday night, one of the most exciting games of the weekend. Georgia survives a scare from Georgia Tech, going to 8 overtimes. They found a way to win 44-42 as freshman Nate Frazier zipped it to the end zone for the walk-off 2-point conversion. But it was quarterback Carson Beck finished the night with 297 through the air, 5 passing touchdowns, 2 of those coming in the overtime periods. He also connected with 2 touchdown passes to Dominic Lovett, another to Oscar Delp. But the best news for Beck, that's now 3 straight games for him without an interception. He had that stretch on the season where he threw 12 interceptions across 6 games. But over his last 3 games, 11 touchdown passes, no picks. And he will have to have another good day against a really good Texas defense in the SEC title game. Keep in mind, it's a rematch. That was the game against Georgia. They won earlier this year in Austin, remember? But Beck threw 3 interceptions in that game, did not throw a touchdown pass. I think Georgia needs to win this game to lock in a playoff spot. Some people are saying even if they lose to Texas in the SEC title game, they're in, but it's 3 losses. We will see. But keep in mind, they win this when they get a first-round bye. It's interesting. Bulldogs not nearly as dominant this year as they were with those back-to-back national title teams. They gave up almost 600 yards to Georgia Tech this past week, 260 on the ground. But look, they still have a chance. Punch your ticket, you get in there. Kirby Smart's squad still has a chance of winning it all for the 3rd time in 4 years. And they will head to the SEC title game for the 4th straight season, 7th time in Kirby's 9 years at Georgia. Another winner of the weekend, Vols running back Dylan Sampson. They were playing a must-win game in Nashville on Saturday against Vanderbilt. They had to win to keep their playoff hopes alive. It was a little hairy early. A kickoff return for a score, a fumble, and another touchdown. And Vandy jumped out to a 14-10 lead. But Tennessee would settle down from there, taking a 24-17 halftime lead. And they went on to win this in 36-23. Finished the regular season 10-2, 6-2 in the conference. And a big reason for their win on Saturday, it was SEC's leading rusher, Dylan Sampson, who had 25 carries for 178 yards. I mentioned last week he was snubbed as the Doak Walker finalist, but he finishes the regular season the 6th leading rusher in the country with 1,485 rushing yards. He's the leading rusher in the SEC by a mile. The next closest was Jarquez Hunter, who had 1,200 yards. Rocket Sanders was 3rd with 881. Of course, Sampson broke that 1929 school record with 22 single-season rushing touchdowns, and his 1,485 rushing yards topped the school record of 1,464 set by Travis Stevens back in 2001. Josh Heupel saying, I don't even know if I have the right words to describe Dylan Sampson, what he means to our team just as a player and a leader, but I don't know if anybody's played the position better than he has this year. Ironically, Sampson did not reach the end zone for the first time this season, but Tennessee, they will now get a week off to rest and get ready for the playoff. Another winner of the weekend, Billy Napier. What a turnaround for Napier down the backstretch of this season. Caps things off with a 31-11 win over Florida State and Tallahassee. Gators were 4-5 after their loss at Texas, but they went on to win their last 3 in a row, LSU, Ole Miss, and FSU, and they finished 7-5 overall. Quite a finish for Napier, who everyone agreed had the toughest schedule in the country. Optimism abound now as the freshman quarterback DJ Lagway played really well down the stretch. He had 2 touchdown passes in this one. They ran the ball well, over 230 rushing yards, and now Napier is pulling in a bunch of recruits these last couple weeks. The arrow pointed upward for Napier in Gainesville. Really impressive considering he was dead to rights just a couple weeks ago. And shout out to the Florida defense, man. Really played well. 8 sacks, 14 tackles for a loss, and 4 fumbles against FSU. And Montrell Johnson became the 6th Florida player to surpass 3,000 rushing yards. Came into the game with 29-90 in his career at Louisiana and Florida. We'll see what bowl game the Gators go to. I assume probably one of the Florida Bowls, but really good finish to the year for Billy Napier. Another winner of the weekend at Mizzou, Eli Drinkwitz. What a win for Mizzou in the snow Saturday afternoon in Columbia, beating Arkansas 28-21. Drinkwitz is now on 4 or 5 in the Battle Line rivalry, including 3 in a row. And congrats to Mizzou. They finished the year 9-3, just shy of 10 wins. A great follow-up to that 11-2 season last year. And Eli Drinkwitz having quite a run. We bid farewell to quarterback Brady Cook. He was a really good quarterback for them these past few seasons. 8,700 career passing yards, 47 touchdown passes, 20 rushing touchdowns in his career. We also bid farewell to Luther Burden, perhaps playing in his last game with Mizzou, an 11-yard catch. Also had a big 2-point conversion to get the lead to 7 in the final minutes. They will not go to the playoff, but we'll see Mizzou one more time in their bowl game and hopefully see Brady Cook. We'll see about Luther Burden, but congrats to Eli Drinkwitz on another great season. Another winner of the weekend, Garrett Nussmeier, strong finish to the year for LSU after those losses to A&M, Alabama, and Florida, but Brian Kelly bounced back to win his last 2 at home against Vandy and Oklahoma. And LSU beat Oklahoma 37-17, led by Garrett Nussmeier, threw for 277 and 3 passing touchdowns. Scary moment in the first half, though, as Nuss got hit hard to the ground, landed on his throwing shoulder, would leave the game and get x-rays. A.J. Swan would come in, but Nuss would come back into the game and look strong. He completed 2 long touchdown passes to receiver Chris Hilton. Brian Kelly saying after the game, that was an easy tap out for most people. That's an easy one to say, I'm not coming back in. But that's the kind of player he is, the kind of competitor he is. Nussmeier finishes the season with the 6th most passing yards in the country, second most in the SEC with 26 touchdown passes, second to only Carson Beck, and a spirited finish to the year that seemed like things might have been going off the rails. Tigers have a chance to get to 9 victories in the bowl game for a third straight season. And could we see Nussmeier back? More on that in a little bit. And lastly, our last winner of the weekend, the Ole Miss defense. Shout out to Ole Miss, who got the win in the Egg Bowl as they won 26-14. They racked up 3 sacks. Walter Nolan with a sack and a half. Chris Paul with a sack and an interception. Centurion Perkins recovered a fumble. Tre Washington had a pick. Rebels stopped State on 4 plays inside the 5-yard line late in the game to spoil their comeback bid. Lane Kiffin saying after the game, it's a huge game in this state. And look, weird things happen in these Egg Bowls. Jackson Dart, he became the Ole Miss career passing yardage leader with the 17-yard pass to Jordan Watkins in the second quarter. Incredible career for Jackson Dart. Hopefully we see him in the bowl game. And the Rebels are most likely headed to a bowl, not the playoff. But we'll see what happens here over the last week of the season. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, we'll get to our losers of the weekend. But first, today's episode presented to you by our friends over at FanDuel. You can get ready to tackle all the NFL and college action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win over FanDuel. The FanDuel Sportsbook app going to give you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today, and you'll get started with that $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And yes, they've got playoff odds up there right now. If you like a certain team to make a run, you can bet on it over at FanDuel.com. Go check them out today. All right, roll along here, Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen of the day. Shout out to everydayers. Keep coming back and checking us out. Gosh, we're going to have tons to discuss, from the SEC championship game this weekend to the transfer portal. Guys make announcements about coming back. We're going to have all that covered for you. National Signing Day this week. We're going to talk with our buddy Brian Smith. I mean, there's a ton to discuss. All right, we got our winners of the weekend. Now let's get to our losers of the weekend. We got to start with the Texas A&M offense. My goodness, man. The Aggies' most anticipated home game in over a decade. So much to play for in the renewal of the Lonestar Showdown rivalry. A trip to the SEC championship game was on the line, and the Aggies blew it. Offense struggled all night long, only 248 yards of offense. Quarterback Marcel Reed could not get anything going. Was held to just 146 passing, 60 yards rushing, also had an interception. Running back Amari Daniels, just 1.5 yards per carry. Texas just shut them down. And offensive coordinator Colin Klein had no answers for that Longhorn defense. As late in the game, trailing by 10, they get down to the Texas 5 with a 1st and goal. But 4 straight runs get stuffed, and they turned it over on downs. Mike Elko saying after the game, we had an opportunity to do something really special this year. We could not close on it. So that will haunt me. That will haunt us. That will haunt the players. Yeah, a chance to advance and get to the SEC championship game for the first time since they've been in the SEC. But the Aggies come up short, and unfortunately, they dropped to 8-4 in a season that, you know, at one point they were leading the SEC a couple weeks ago, but schedule got tougher, and they started racking up L's. Last time the Aggies, by the way, were held to just 7 points in a game. You got to go back to 2019 when they lost to Joe Burrow and LSU in Baton Rouge that year, 50-7. Could this Texas team be the team that goes on to win the national championship, much like that LSU team? We will see. I don't think Quinn Ewers will win the Heisman, but we'll see what happens. All right, another loser of the weekend over at Auburn, Hugh Freeze. It was a nice win over A&M a week ago, but Hugh Freeze and Auburn, they fall in the Iron Bowl 28-14. A 5th Iron Bowl loss, 4th consecutive losing season for Auburn, 4 straight seasons of 7 losses. They miss a bowl game for the 2nd time in 3 years. And Auburn had their chances in this one, getting deep into Alabama territory multiple times, but a missed field goal, turning it over on downs at the Alabama 19. an awful trick play that resulted in a Jarquez Hunter interception at the Alabama 5. If they played a bit cleaner, they could have had a chance. Might have had a chance at the upset in this one because Alabama, their mistakes were plentiful. But that is now 2 seasons on the plains for Hugh Freeze, and he's 11-14 overall, 5-11 in the SEC. And I know he's only been there for 2 of them, but 5 straight losses in the Iron Bowl now. And look, Hugh Freeze has got to start turning this thing around. He's expected to sign another top 10 recruiting class this week, and that is certainly exciting for Auburn fans, but Hugh has got to start improving on that win total next season. If he doesn't, he may not last much longer there. Recruiting's great, but you got to develop the talent. You got to win games. Missing a bowl game. It's like that's not the standard for Auburn. Is at minimum you get to a bowl game. Another loser of the weekend. I hate to keep picking on my guy Diego Pavia. He was awesome this year for Vanderbilt, but not so much down the stretch of the season, and not so much Saturday. As Vanderbilt lost at home to Tennessee, 36-23. Pavia was just 8 of 17 for 104 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Also had 11 carries for 45 yards. And after that awesome start to the year, Vanderbilt lost 4 of their last 5 games on the season, finishing 6-6, 3-5 in the SEC. Clark Lee said after the game, the Commodores ran just 11 plays in the second half to Tennessee's 44. That just can't happen. I mean, that resembles more old school Vandy or, Vandy of the past several years. But the good news is we will get to see Pavia play one more time. Vandy is bowl eligible, and with him not having eligibility after this season, we will see who they draw in their bowl game. Should be fun to watch Pavia one more time. Another loser of the weekend, I've got Arkansas's defense. The battle line rivalry between Arkansas and Mizzou was an exciting one in the snow. For those who watched, Arkansas came up short against Mizzou. They lose 28-21, but the Hogs defense could not get a stop when they needed it most. After taking a 21-20 lead with 5 minutes to go, they let Mizzou go on an 8-play, 75-yard drive to score the go-ahead touchdown and the 2-point conversion. And after a three and out after halftime, the Hogs defense allowed Mizzou to score on their final 4 possessions. Field goal, touchdown, field goal, touchdown. Mizzou was 6 of 15 on third downs, 2 of 3 on fourth downs. And really, DC, Travis Williams, he has got to improve defensively. Arkansas finishes 6-6 on the season, but you look at some of those losses. I mean, they gave up 34 points to LSU, 39 in that early season loss to Oklahoma State, 63 in that loss to Ole Miss. That'll really skew the season stats, but defense got to improve next year if Arkansas is going to take that next step. They had moments, right? The Tennessee win, they played lights out. Landon Jackson had an awesome year. By the way, tough scene watching him getting carted off in that game. Never want to see that for a guy in this last, regular season game. But Hogs are bowl eligible. We will see them in a bowl game. Big questions if Sam Pittman will be back next year. He had a hip that was bothering him all year that was going to require surgery. He coached from the press box in this one, not all down on the field, assuming because of the scare with the snow and all that. But some rumors. Our buddy John Neighbors from Locked On Razorback seems to think that chance that Sam Pittman opts to hang it up after this year, retire. We will see what happens over at Arkansas. Another loser of the weekend, I've got the Oklahoma defense just a week after shutting down Alabama and Jalen Milroe. Held them to just 3 points in Norman. The same Oklahoma defense had no answer for LSU, giving up almost 400 yards of offense and 37 points to them. Now, one of those was a 100-yard kickoff return for a touchdown from Aaron Anderson, but LSU 6 of 15 on third downs, 2 for 2 on fourth downs. Brent Venables saying after the game, too many explosive plays. He says, we can't do that. Expect to beat anybody with a pulse. Our margin for error was razor thin anyway. Right now, we're not good enough to overcome that. Oklahoma, they've got to get that offense right for next year. All eyes on Brent Venables on who he's going to hire as the new offensive coordinator. Big OC hire for him this offseason. It was a rough first season in the SEC for Oklahoma, but they did get to bowl eligibility, and that looked not likely a few weeks ago. All right, a couple more losers of the weekend. I got Mark Stoops. He loses the Governor's Cup for the first time in 6 years, loses to Louisville 41-14, and Stoops in Kentucky miss a bowl game for the first time in 9 years. And really, outside of that COVID year, he had won at least 7 games in each of the past 7 seasons. But this year goes 4-8, 1-7 in conference, an abject disaster. They did opt to start the true freshman quarterback Cutter Boley at quarterback in this one. Had some success the week prior against Texas, but threw for just 48 yards and 2 touchdowns, or 2 interceptions, rather. No touchdowns. Gave away to transfer Gavin Wimsatt. Mark Stoops said after the game, I had a lot of confidence in Cutter. We got to make sure we build a very good team around him. We have to make sure that we have strong competition. Kentucky wide receiver Jamori Macklin had a big day in this one, 121 yards and 2 touchdowns. But he said after the game, this team was really lacking leadership. It's a little surprising because they had some big names back, right? Like J.J. Weaver and some other guys on that defense. But you didn't think that leadership was going to be the problem, especially, Barry and Brown, Dane Key, Eli Cox was back at center for another. I mean, just like dudes have been around that program for years and years. Deion Walker, but rough year for Kentucky. And lastly, our last loser of the week, I've got Jeff Lebby back on Friday. Mississippi State lost the Egg Bowl to Ole Miss 26-14. They gave a better effort than maybe many expected after an opening drive interception. They scored touchdowns on their next 2 drives, grabbed the 14-10 lead, but they would not score another point over the final 3 quarters. Defense played one of their better games of the season for State, keeping Jackson Dart in check. And outside of an 89-yard run by Ulysses Bentley, they did okay against the run too. But freshman quarterback Michael Van Buren, 280 passing yards, a touchdown, 2 picks. And Jeff Lebby, bottom line, he has got to get more talent into Starkville next year, going 2-10 in his SEC debut, 0-8 in the SEC, the lone team not to win a conference game this year. And Mississippi State entered the game as the SEC's worst defense, closed out their first winless SEC campaign since 2002. Got to get better. All right, still more to come here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. First, I want to remind you guys about our friends at the Game Time app. We're telling you guys Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Their curation process is going to make it easier for you to save on sports, concert, comedy, theater, whatever it is. All in pricing. I love that feature. You toggle it on, going to show your total upfront, no surprise fees at checkout. And lowest price guarantee or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Go take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Had a few of you message us that y'all were using the Game Time app for the A&M Texas game, kind of checking prices up till right before kickoff to see if some of the people dropped the prices on their tickets. Again, you can monitor all that over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, use our code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. If you've never used them before, terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem our code LOCKEDONCollege, get $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It is game time. All right, roll along here to Locked On SEC, part of Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. Before we get out of here, I wanted to get to the transfer portal already heating up. Look, we'll have all week to talk about college football playoff and the rankings coming out this week and what needs to happen for Alabama to get in, or South Carolina, or Ole Miss. We think Tennessee's in. We think Georgia's in. I think Texas is in. So we'll see. We'll have all week to debate that. But I want to get to the transfer portal, as we had some guys hitting the portal as quickly as yesterday. Julian Humphrey, defensive back for Georgia, appeared in each of the Bulldogs games prior to the Georgia Tech game, announced his decision to transfer out of the program, saying, first and foremost, I want to thank the man above. I want to say thank you to all the loyal Georgia fans along the way. After careful consideration, I will be entering my name in the portal with 2 years left of eligibility. He was a 4-star recruit in the class of 2022 out of the state of Texas. Had some interest from Texas A&M. We'll see if maybe that's where he could be heading, but he'd been receiving more playing time this season, 9 tackles, 4 pass breakups, and 11 appearances this year. Kirby Smart was asked about it on his call on Sunday. He said, I'm not dealing with the portal. I'm worried about my team. I've learned in this thing, you worry about the players who are with you, not the ones who aren't. It's a decision each kid has to make. Asked specifically about Julian Humphrey's status. He said, no status I'm aware of. I saw the same thing you did. We're worried about the guys that are going to be with the team. So I guess basically saying Humphrey entering the portal, he's not with us anymore. Over to LSU, they are losing one of their top quarterback recruits in recent years. Rickie Collins, who was a 4-star prospect out of Baton Rouge in the 2023 class, was rated the number 18 quarterback in that group. He had interest back then from Florida State and Arkansas, Georgia Tech, Purdue, but was a redshirt freshman this year. Will have 3 years of eligibility remaining. Brian Kelly, though, some people thinking maybe, they lost the top recruit, Bryce Underwood, who was committed to them for a long time and then got a bag to head on up to Michigan. With Rickie Collins hitting the portal, this might be a sign that Garrett Nussmeier is expected to come back next year. Brian Kelly did say after the game Saturday night, he said, quote, some key players, having key players come back. They haven't announced yet, but we're going to have some key players decide to come back. So we'll see on that one, but that could be big for LSU. If they could, some rumblings, maybe, Perkins could come back for them. Maybe Emory Jones, the right tackle. See what happens with Mason Taylor, the tight end. But getting Nussmeier back, that would be big, considering it'd be one of the more seasoned veteran quarterbacks to return next year in the SEC. Speaking of quarterbacks, quarterback room going to look very different at Auburn next year. Tigers reportedly losing 2 quarterbacks via the transfer portal. Freshman Hank Brown and sophomore Holden Gariner are entering the portal, and that's interesting because senior Peyton Thorne is done after this year as well. So gonna have to reload in that quarterback room. Of course, they brought in the dual threat freshman Walker White this year, but he is the only scholarship quarterback currently projected to be on next year's team with the departure of those guys. So better start hitting the portal there, Hugh, unless, look, even if they want to start Walker White or project him as the starter next year, like, you got to have some backups. You got to have some competition. So expect Auburn to be working the portal big time when it comes to quarterbacks. Auburn also losing tight end Micah Riley to the portal on Sunday. He had a touchdown catch earlier this season against New Mexico. Over at Florida, redshirt freshman wide receiver Andy Jean is entering the portal. He was a 4-star recruit out of the Miami area. Appeared in 4 games in 2023. Finished with 6 catches for 97 yards. Did not register in the stat sheet this season. See where he ends up. And over at Oklahoma, Jaquez Petaway, sophomore wide receiver. He is entering the portal. He was a top 100 recruit. 16 catches, 157 yards in his time in Norman. 5'10", 194 pounds in that class of 2023. He's moving on. And over at Mississippi State, wide receiver J.J. Harrell and Creed Whitmore will hit the portal. Harrell was a 4-star in the 2024 class, played in 4 games this season, did not record a catch. And Whitmore, not surprising, he opted out of the season after week 4, so you kind of knew he was going to be moving on. And just looking at here, some names to keep an eye on if you're an SEC fan. These are guys outside of the SEC who could end up at SEC schools. Some names to keep an eye on. UCF D lineman Derek LeBlanc, Gus Malzahn stepping down from his UCF head coaching position. If you missed that story, he's going to go be the OC at Florida State. Weird times when coaches are leaving their head coaching post to go be a coordinator at another place. We saw Chip Kelly did it last year, leaving the UCLA job to go be OC at Ohio State. Gus Malzahn going to leave the UCF head coach job to be the OC at Florida State. But regardless, UCF losing some recruits and losing some players to the portal. D lineman Derek LeBlanc, name to keep an eye on. NC State wide receiver Kevin Concepcion entering the portal. Had 460 receiving yards and 6 touchdowns this season for the Wolfpack. Was freshman All-America in 2023. I've already seen some people saying Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss would make a lot of sense. Arizona former 4-star quarterback Braden Dorman. He was a freshman this year, didn't play. He's in the portal. Cincinnati former 4-star safety DJ Taylor played in several games this season after transferring in from Arizona State, so he'll have 1 more year to play. And this kid caught up completely. Texas Tech wide receiver Micah Hudson is in the portal. And looks like that is kind of Purdue tight end Tavian Galloway. So, again, those are just some names to keep an eye on. Potentially, could be names that land on an SEC roster. All right, thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to everydayers. Come on back and check us out tomorrow. We're going to be talking recruiting with our buddy Brian Smith. We got tons of stuff going on this week. It's going to be a busy week on Locked On SEC, so make sure you're subscribed and catching everything right here for your first listen. For your second listen, check out some of our other great podcasts. John Neighbors doing Locked On Razorbacks, Clint Chamberlain with Locked On Bulldogs, Tons of great content on the Locked On Network. I'm Chris Gordy. It's been Locked On SEC. Call back and see us. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.